know you're a mental health advocate.
Mm-hmm.
And you are one of my friends that were one of the first people to talk about depression and their own experiences with depression. So can you tell us more about that?
So I have been dealing, I don't like, girl, where do I start? Okay. Got a lot of trauma. I definitely don't look like what I've been through. I tell my story all the time because I feel like by telling my story, it encourages others to live their truth and to
Mhm.
know that, you are not what you've been through. You can create a new path. It may be more difficult, but you can. So when I was 6 years old, my mother's boyfriend molested me. And that's where um, everything kind of started for me. Sexual nature, identity. I remember being in middle school, having little boys like wanting to touch me and give me snacks for it. So I'm like, oh my God, I was a prostitute when I was in sixth grade because they was giving me gummy bears to touch my booty. And it was just kind of like I was letting it happen because I learned that that's how I got attention.
Mhm.
Um, so I had like self-worth, self-esteem issues, but I was really, really smart. Everybody liked me. Nobody knew
Mhm.
what was going on the inside. So I had this self-inflicted perfectionism that I ended up, taking on where I could not make a mistake, which led to anxiety. So I had, battling the demons within of like, this is what I'm supposed to be. This is what college, and I'm going to be a doctor. So I have to be those things. So
Mhm.
all of that external pressure were extrinsic motivating factors, but it also led to like poor mental health. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
Um, when I was in college or leading into college, my senior year to my sophomore year of college, I was dating a man who was physically, emotionally, and mentally abusive. And I could not find a way to get out of that situation. And nobody knew what was going on because I knew how to wear a really good mask.
Mhm.
Then I ended up falling in love with, who was at that time the love of my life, and we got married, and everything started to just kind of come out at that point. Well, before we got married, I was actually, when we were dating, I was kidnapped and sexually assaulted and physically assaulted for 3 days.
Mm.
And yeah, it was like a whole thing.
Was
And
this
then
DC?
from this was in DC. Yeah, this was the summer before my senior year. So I should have graduated Howard in '08, but in the summer of '07, like I had that very traumatic experience and my mom refused to pay the bill for me to start my senior year. She's like, "You're coming home." I was like, "No, I'm not. I'm staying." And I
Mm.
couldn't stay. So at that time my then fiance came and got me and like took me back to Georgia, and he ended up deploying, and I was like, look, I really want to finish at Howard. So he allowed me to go back to Howard to finish.
Mhm.
Well, right after I finished, he ended up being blown up in Afghanistan. And so I was like,
Mhm.
all of the things, like, why do I have to continue to experience, all of the things? And
Yeah.
I had to be strong for him and his family and everything. Like, it was pretty bad. Like, he was the only survivor of his accident. He had second and third degree burns, severe TBI, severe PTSD. He recognized me, but he didn't know that we were married. He didn't recognize his
Mm.
mom. Like, it was like a lot of things. Well, fast forward a little bit, get pregnant, excited to be pregnant, but scared at the same time. And then we had an incident happen within our family, and he flipped. He literally came home one day and was a whole different person and was like, we're going to Jag tomorrow and getting a divorce. And I'm like, how? Why? What happened?
Yeah.
And it was really like his mental health with everything that was going on. He felt a lot of pressures. He was going through things internally that he wasn't sharing.
Mhm.
I remember waking up in the middle of the night with him, being physically aggressive with me, but he thought that he was back at war,
Right. That
so
trauma. Yeah.
yeah, so he was like going through. We ended up getting a divorce, and this is when I ended up meeting you. We got a divorce, and during the divorce, I ended up miscarrying, and I was carrying
Mm.
twins, and it was a late term miscarriage. And I'm
Wow.
just like, what else could happen, God? Like, what else? The people in my community were like, you look like death when you first got here. Like, oh my God, like, how are you still standing? And I'm like, it's God, it's clearly not me,
Please,
you
yeah.
know? So in all of that, was severely depressed, could not express myself with him because whenever I would show anything other than happy, he would take it on and then he would be like, oh, I should just be dead with everybody else.
Mm.
I ended up attempting suicide and I was very serious about it. So it wasn't like a game. I was like trying to take myself out. I took enough medicine to take myself out. I took a bottle of Percocet, a bottle of Tylenol 3 with codeine. I took a bottle of Ambien, and some other stuff. And I remember getting to the hospital and like falling asleep, and I was out for a couple of days. Like, and the bad part about that is my family was down the street and nobody came.
Did they
So
know?
they knew I was, in the hospital and like nobody came. Like he came to the hospital and was like, is she gonna live? And the doctors was like, well, yeah, we think that she's out of the woods. And he was like, all right. And he left. My mom and my stepdad were at Fort Gordon at the time and we're at Fort Stewart. So, that's down the street.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, no, nobody came. And it was just kind of like everything that I've gone through in my life, I've had to go through by myself. So my survivor instincts is really just to be like autocratic. Like whatever it
Mm-hmm.
is, I'm gonna do it myself because I've had to go through all of these things by myself. And so that's kind of like my trauma in a nutshell. I've been depressed with major depressive disorder. And I started taking serotonin when I was there in Augusta because it had gotten bad where I was just having very intrusive thoughts and could not get out of them.
Mm-hmm.
And then later on, I ended up being diagnosed as bipolar type 2, which is you have depression and deeper, darker depression. So I'm bipolar type 2 with some anxiety in there, a little
Mm-hmm.
couple of extra sprinkles. But I'm really living an amazing life. I get to travel. I have a great job. I have friends and family around me that love me. I'm able to communicate my truth. I'm able to put people in the boxes where they belong. A lot of times, people say my family did me wrong. I'm just going to get rid of them. No, you don't have to get rid of them. It's not necessarily letting go, but it's about moving. And this is what I tell some of the people that, my mentees, you don't have to let go of your mom or your dad because they're not treating you the way that you want to be treated, but try to communicate to them, your needs and your wants and like how you're feeling. And if they're not able to live up to your expectation, then that is your expectation. They could possibly be doing the best that they can. My mom is doing the best that she can to love me the way that I want to be loved, the way that I receive love. But she falls short of my expectations. But
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't mean that she doesn't love me. And so
Right.
what I've learned is I have to let go of the expectations that I have of others and the way that they treat me. And as long as they're not treating me poorly, then I have to meet them where they are. We say we meet